Welcome to The Art of Growth. I'm Joel Hubbard.
I'm Jim Zartman.
I'm Serena Heroy.
And today we have Serena with us because we are talking about the farmer. And so we thought we would invite a farmer along for the journey. But
do you farm?
Do you farm? Do you have cows? Do you own a
don't, but
combine?
I do have close friends that homestead, and I grew up as a restaurant kid, so I'm very familiar with farm products and utilizing them to their fullest, tastiest form.
to their tastiest form. Yes. So Serena is a friend of ours. She also designed the cover of the new book, Hunters, Farmers, and Teamers. And she also designed the Feelings Wheel and a bunch of other stuff. We've known her for many, many years now. Her wonderful hubby edits our podcast. So we just said, can you drive down an hour and spend some time chatting with us about the farmer? So your husband pointed out after the last episode that people are still getting used to the terms hunter, farmer, and teamer. And because they still have the legacy images of the instincts in their mind, we'll do the shorthand version right here, which is the farmer instinct we're talking about often goes with the evolutionary or developmental instinct, often referred to as preservational or self-preservation. The hunter instinct we talked about last week, it is tied to that sexual instinct, and the teamer is a term for the social instinct. And I don't know if, Joel, you want to give like a 30-second version of like why we are using these terms.
Sure, mostly because it's accessible and memorable. When we're using the other terms, the more psychological terms, we find that it is more difficult for people in business who are not familiar with these psychological terms to really grasp it immediately. And then in terms of memorability too, hunter, farmer, teamer seems very memorable. And I think that it's got a lot of history to it. So it's something that we can look back to our hunter-gatherer, ancestors and then the movement to farming. And among them, there was always, tribal leaders that we call teamers. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we talk about this in the book about how there was this movement from primarily like the hunting and gathering to a more stable, structured, sustainable way of living in farming, where there are routines and we use the resources at hand to have a more predictable way of generating the resources we need to survive. But what else would you want to throw in there, Joel, at the beginning, just to say, like, when we're talking about the farmer instinct, how would people identify themselves maybe really quickly if they're just coming to this episode for the first time or they're new to this concept?
Well, it's those three, we always say that there's three characteristics that define an instinct and a dominant instinct, and that has to do with your resource management being one of them, or optimization, as we call it. How do you manage your resources? Is that where your attention goes? Is to, do we have enough? That's always the question for farmers. And so we're looking at that, like, do we have enough? What do we have on hand? What do we need to make sure that we have enough of? And so there's things like that, like wellness. How am I feeling? How are you feeling? Make sure that rhythms are kind of followed. So early to bed, early to rise, that saying emerged from that world. Things like, making sure that I'm eating correctly, exercising. There's all sorts of things that go into the whole idea of wellness. And so then you also have things like your, the immediate home or the immediate space that you inhabit. You tend to want to have that be a place of the environment being comfortable, being a place where you can work and really thrive in that space. So managing that. So things like, do we have a good structure for that environment? Do we have, is the temperature set at the place of optimal comfort, and is there order in that space as well? So those are things that if you resonate with the majority of that, then you might consider that could be your first or possibly your second, but that's how you define what a farmer is.
Well, let's talk to you. Like, what do you think it means to be a farmer? What did it mean to you, or how did you understand yourself more as you understood your dominant instinct?
Yeah, so when I first discovered the language of like self-preservation with the instincts and getting into the Enneagram, it was pretty easy for me to identify this self-preservation or farmer instinct in me, because my mind and my heart are just drawn to this idea of longevity, this idea of sustainability and stability, consistency. Like, if I can make things in my life long-term, repeatable, efficient, then that feels like valuable. That feels like it's lasted the test of time, and it's going to be reliable, right? The sense of like reliability, which creates a sense of security and safety, which I think a farmer tends to be a little focused on. Like, we want to last this winter. How do we make sure this is we're gonna pull through, and creating the systems needed to do that for the benefit of self, but also like the nuclear people around you and the grouping around you, and just thinking in terms of systems was always something I was attracted to, or just realized was a natural framework of how I think. And the word farmer is so palatable, I think, because I love visuals, and I love that it gives this multifaceted dimension of thinking of what the self-preservation instinct can manifest as, because farming is not limited to just like growing crops or whatever. There's all kinds of different types of farming out there. And just that, in the sense that there's even just that diversity, just gives space to open it up to feel more palatable. And so, but this idea of the farmer and like utilizing its resources to its fullest potential and caring, even the idea of caring for the land, of caring for the thing that you are trying to grow. It's like, oh my gosh, this brings life, right? Like, I want to grow something. I think we all have all the instincts, right? And so this need in us for wanting to grow and care for the things that we're given, I feel like the farmer instinct really highlights that and leans into that and cares about it in ways where they will structure things to make sure that happens, make sure growth happens, make sure things can thrive, that the things that matter can thrive,
The language you're using reminds me of like a capacity for cultivation.
Yes. Cultivation, yes.
Cultivation seems like it would go well with how you're describing that.
Yeah.
Do you have stories of like that happening in your life? You doing this sort of nurturing something into growth and having reliability around you, creating structures and systems and resource management, all the things you've talked about. I'd love to hear some stories.
Even just looking at the journey of growth, right? Of just self-awareness, like this idea of, my journey really started when I became a parent. It was kind of like this diving in head first into this new form of life that I had zero experience with before, right? I mean, you just become a parent. You just do. And then you're
Hi, this is yours now.
Yeah, this is yours now. This life that you are responsible for. Hopefully you did your life okay. And even if you feel like you're fumbling with that life, it's like, oh man, can I really help this other life and be its source of like sustainability? Like, oh my God, too much pressure. No, but it is the best pressure, right? It's the most beautiful work for sure. It's the most beautiful change and shift, but it's humbling. And I think in that journey of humility of being like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, and I want to do this well, and this is long term. Like, I'm a mom now for the rest of my life. No matter what, I will always be a mom now. And I wasn't before my firstborn was born, which is just mind-boggling in itself, that concept. But then leaning into like, okay, I'm a mom now. What does that mean? And how do I do this well? And in a way that's sustainable and not going to burn me out, right? Because I do think, I mean, even, it can get said on like just social media platforms or the overwhelming load of information in our society and the resources in our hands is like, it's so easy to get overwhelmed with the influx of information and to get like either analysis paralysis or just question your own instincts and natural ability and gifting, and to just like kind of try and quick fix because it worked for somebody else, instead of trying to like tune into like, wait, who am I? What is being a mom for me, and how is that sustainable? And like, I am a mom, but how do I grow and do this well? And so leaning into things that I saw would bring long-term fruitfulness, long-term that I would be able to incorporate in my life in a way that I could sustain. So if there was a practice or a suggestion in parenting that felt like too much work to do all at once, and it was like, oh, you got to do it now. Like, this is how you potty train. 1 week, bam, go. You got it. Your kid's potty trained in 1 week. And if it's not 1 week, then you did it wrong. And it's like, oh my God, what? Like, too much pressure. So again, it's like, how do I, as Serena and who I am, approach this in a way that is good for who I am, but also for my daughter and who she is, and what we can grow and cultivate together to learn this new skill that will remain. Like, because there's something, again, that idea of the farmer, there's this draw to what will remain, what's gonna withstand the storms, what's gonna be the foundation if the house falls down, right? It's looking at the foundation of something and wanting that to be strong. And so again, yeah, like looking into, as far as growth goes, like just what is attainable, and it's almost like microdosing, right? Like in your guys' book, you mentioned the finance guy, Warren Buffett, and how he has this quote about how like there's incremental change like daily. If he could find value in just, it's not the quick hits in the stock market where you get rich quick. It's like, what are the things you invest in that have value and over time will produce that wealth or value? And that's a big part of it too. That's like how I approach growth too.
There's so much in there that's really rich. That one of them is that you mentioned like you can overdo it because of the pressure, the external expectations that can be, that you can take onto yourself. Like, oh my gosh, I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I've got to be a good farmer. Here's what it looks like. To be a good mom. Here's what it looks like. What are the contributing factors to burnout for a farmer? Because you mentioned burnout. Like, so what are the contributing factors? Is it the overdoing? Is it sort of like over revving on maintaining that system and tweaking that system and adjusting the system and never ending with that sort of, is it that there's no productivity from that work? Is it, what are the things that contribute to sheer exhaustion and just being like, I can't continue doing this?
Yeah, I think for me personally, there has to be movement. In setting a system and having rhythms, if there isn't some sort of movement, whether that's growth, whether that's just fruitfulness or like increase of resources, or, I mean, I'm just saying growth in different ways, but like there has to be some sort of movement in the system, because I think burnout for me feels like when things become stagnant. And then that obsession of like, let me just tweak it again because it's not working as effective as I wanted it to. And then the tweaks don't work. And it's just like, at the end of the day, if it's like, all right, if we need to bulldoze this down, let's do it. That's how I feel too. My avoidance of burnout is like, tear it all down. Let's start again. Like there is that in me too, to just be willing to re-examine in order for efficiency and effectiveness. This willingness to like, oh my gosh, if this method of work and didn't work and it wasn't the most efficient way to get the goals that we had set before us, then let's reevaluate, but let's reevaluate by putting in a different system. Let's not just burn it down and never build. If there's the promise of building again, then that is a big motivator. Tearing it down isn't necessarily the scary thing, at least for me personally. It's more about like just that reassurance that no, there will be a better system put in place though. But if we just go away, if the point is to just burn the system for the sake of burning the system, then I get some anxiety and I get a little burnout.
Okay,
and
that's
I'm like,
good clarity there.
Right.
That's helpful clarity. Because I think, so you mentioned progress is important, the movement.
Yes.
The system has to generate something. Otherwise, and I would suspect that'd be true for every farmer. It's like if my farming doesn't produce anything, it's going to burn out anyone who's working.
Yeah.
And then I think you have enough of you're predominantly farmer. You have a little bit of the hunter, it sounds like, in you. So there's a little bit of that flexibility to go, you know what, let's change up some things if it's not working. But I'm glad you clarified. It's not like, yes, I can change things, but I don't want to just burn the entire thing down. And I think one of the pieces of wisdom that farmers contribute is, if we're going to change, how do we take what we currently have and not just throw it out, but repurpose it in some way? Okay,
that gets me
you gotta look.
excited. It's like, let's go. That gets me excited because there is that, again, the overarching goal of just being effective and especially in business, if you have these set goals, it's like, let's go at it. Let's go at it in the best way we know how. And usually, especially if other people are involved, having some systems and structures give a ramp. It's just like, I love building ramps for people, if I can put it that way. It's like, I want the whole to succeed, because if we're all together going towards this thing, we're way bigger than the sum of our parts, right? And so it's like ramp building is almost what I think of when I do what I do at work with any administrative kind of stuff. It's like, some people might see that as like mundane and annoying and stuff, but the motivation behind that is like, but look at how it sets them up for success. Look at how it gives them that on-ramp for us to all be in unison, because if there's murkiness and miscommunication, I feel like it just leaves everybody's walking with their eyes closed. And it's just like, wait, let's not only turn the lights on here and give clarity, let's give a ramp so we can all be on like the same platform together. And so
that's a nice set. That's one of the gifts of this instinct, is like how to set people up.
Yes.
You know, because it requires a lot of that thought around what other types might consider minutia. You know, like the details, the structure. It's like, how do I create an environment where people can thrive?
Exactly.
That on-ramp, I love that imagery, because that's a great imagery. It's like, okay, how do I join into this thing? And farmers tend to think about some of those details, like set the structure so that people can, so systems can thrive.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because we talked about on the hunter episode, when hunters look at the farming, you got to keep moving and look for what's over the next hill, because you don't know if there's going to be a famine, if you're not going to have the right thing. But there's actually a more predictable routine of seasons and a rhythm of life that makes sense to farmers. They go, yes, but the variety is, the odds of something being outside of this is actually less. It's more stable. The seasons are more stable than your chase.
Yeah.
So I think that there can be this feeling of, I trust that if we create this thing that allows everyone to succeed, and we're working with a natural rhythm that occurs in nature and all around us, we're actually better set up for success.
Yes.
It's so funny because I heard it's a guy at the gym who said to me after I described this to him, he says, "Oh, I'm a farmer for sure, but I hunt. I'm a hunter as well, literally." I was like, "Okay, so tell me about that." And he says, "Well, when I hunt, I want to make sure that I know where the deer are going to be." And it's like, that doesn't sound very fun, but anyways, it's sort of like this. I have figured out where the path that they tend to travel on.
Yeah.
And so there's a measure of certainty and predictability. And I think that's one of the
what
features
it is? It's like maybe farmers or self-pres dominant people, there can be an attraction to like puzzles and problem solving.
Sure.
Right? That seems to be a thing where it's like, maybe for someone with the sexual or hunter instinct, it's like the hunt is what is like thrilling, the unpredictability and the thrill of just being out there and having to be prepared for whatever is around that curve. Or
you trust the state of having all of your systems activated.
Yeah,
sure.
It's less preparation than that.
Yes. Being in the heightened sense is going to be the thing that meets the needs.
Yeah.
And for the farmer, it's like being more in a calmer state is going to be more likely to
wait.
No,
this is a good question, because this is where it can get a little bit like, wait a second. Okay, because in my mind, I'm like, okay, if I'm going to go out and hunt and I want to trust my instincts to take over and like be ready for the kill, it's almost like this value for the practice. Like, I'm going to make sure I did my homework.
Sure.
I'm going to make sure I know how to pull the bow, and like there's no weird like offsetted pull like habits that I have, and I'm going to perfect and practice and make sure so when the moment comes, I'm ready. Whereas, what is it like for a hunter? I'm sorry. Like, are you prepared?
I would just say this about it because I really want to stay with the farmer, because yes, it is different, because there's it's more of like what I think Jim was saying. It's the trust in oneself that the unpredictability itself is an opportunity for discovery. If it's already been figured out, there's no discovery, and therefore there's no interest in it. Imagine this. We're going to go explore out in space. And we're going to take our little ship and we're going to go out. And we're going to go to this planet we've never been to. And that our instruments so far cannot really understand what's on that planet or what that planet is made up of. But as best as we can tell, it's sustainable for life. You'll be fine. You'll get there. You'll be able to breathe the air.
Because the first thing I was going to say is like, so we're going to die? Yeah, so we're going to die?
I don't want to die. I want to make sure I want to make sure we can live. But I don't want much more than that. Like if it's
right, no, I got you.
If it's too prepared and it's like, oh yeah, we figured everything out about that planet.
Yeah, I get
and you can
that,
go in there,
right.
then it's just not interesting.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Well, let's go on to talking about the aspects, those three aspects of the farmer with you and your own experience. Before we do, if you are new here and if you don't know this already, we have a new book out called Hunters, Farmers, and Teamers about the instincts and how it affects teams, how you organize, how this impacts businesses, and for individual self-awareness. And so you can get that on Amazon now, and there is a link in the show notes. So you can order that book, get it, leave us a review. It's a huge help for a little startup like ours. But so let's go back and talk to Serena about these three different elements, like starting with wellness. Like, what does that mean to you? Because when we were writing it, we were talking about like this attunement to like sleep and exercise and good nutrition. What I found is in talking to some farmers, and so I tweaked it in there, is that wasn't always the case. For some of them, It wasn't about the pursuit of these things, but it was kind of not wanting to feel certain levels of stress, and so doing things to get away from stress. Because I think I laughed because you mentioned, I talk about Warren Buffett in the book, and that guy has never been like a big exercise guy.
Yeah.
He makes jokes about
Eats
it.
McDonald's or something.
Like a lot of Cokes
daily.
every day.
Yeah.
But he's all about like stress reduction and just keeping us like a calm mind so that he can figure things out. That's what he enjoys doing, is solving problems. So he plays bridge a lot, which I didn't talk about in the book, but that's like a huge thing for him. It's like playing bridge.
Keep his mind sharp, right?
Yeah,
He
just like that's what he likes
his
to
mind.
do.
Yes.
He takes long walks. Like that's kind of his thing.
Yeah.
It's like more about kind of a calm state. So like for you, what does wellness mean? Like how do you understand that?
So it is interesting because I am one of the farmers who is less, I don't want to say obsessed. That sounds negative, but I'm not as into like the fitness world. I am more of a musician and a restaurant kid. So like, that kind of colored, like just, I think that more so has to do with like my background, like my personal background. Right.
Sure.
But in talking with other people who are like farmers, that is a big thing. It is really common is for like health and fitness and this like just wanting to optimize their life and their life source and stuff. And I've always been more attracted to the emotional and spiritual side of like wellness, I would say. Like I'm kind of a nerd in that sphere of things, and spirituality wellness and like emotional wellness and self-awareness wellness, like more of that like internal side of things I lean hard into. And I'm always like all my books are like that, or
I've met quite a few who share that. I don't think that it's that there's a ton more who are into the physical aspects of wellness. I think there's just as many like yourself.
Yes.
So I've known people that are just, it's not for me, it's the safety around the emotional space. And so I'm very much, so I think that
there is
true
this base
for a lot.
level of like, I want to be healthy though. Like I definitely like make my doctor's appointment. Like I have no problem doing that. My dentist appointment, but those are just very basic to me. Like it's just like shaking his head like, what? When's your last doctor appointment? No, it's okay. It's too much TMI. But
like I get a physical every 5 years.
oh my
like,
gosh, yeah, no.
Except for the one I missed, so it was 10. I was just having that discussion with someone who's more the farmer type, and they were laughing at me because I was like, there's nothing wrong.
Sure. But there's like just a check,
But it's awesome that you're on top of that.
Right. And it's just like normal to me though, right? Like, but I don't consider it like extra. Like I don't consider it extra. It's just like normal health stuff. But I will say with like wellness, there is, I don't know if this is more of a resource or not, but like with food. So like not so much nutrition. Again, I'm a restaurant kid, so I think that kind of colored things. But I'm also like, my father's from Hong Kong and is Chinese, and my mom is Italian. So it's like food is a huge part of like my family culture and the meaning behind food. So it's less about nutrition. It is about wellness, and food equals love. And so like
community and relationship.
Yes, and like,
family.
and even just the intricacies of different dishes and the history behind it, and like the region of Asia that it actually comes to, because every region of Asia has such different flavoring and stuff. And just even within like my dad being from Hong Kong and the Cantonese dishes, there's such diversity of like types of dishes and ingredients and all of that is like, I will watch all the food documentaries and nerd out on that. For sure. Because that's like what is so intriguing to me. And I love how food is like that soul language. It just brings comfort. It brings connection. It brings history. Like, and so like if I'm hosting, like friends are coming over, I will make sure there is food. It is always, this is kind of funny. I kind of joke about this sometimes. Like I always get a little awkward if I go to a party and there's not enough food. It's I cringe. It's so I cringe on the inside. I get a little bit tight and I'm like, oh, just because that feeling of like, oh, I don't want to eat this. I don't want to take this if somebody else wants it, you know, like, because I want people to enjoy.
It's like talking resource management already. We're almost getting onto that one already.
It's hard to like separate the two, but
it speaks to a deeper level for you.
Exactly.
It's not just that it's resource.
It's not like, just a flat resource. No,
right. It's like this means
it's
something.
Heart. Yes, it's connection. It's very deep. That's why it's like, well, the food. If I can tweak that to be like, well, the nutrition thing to be like food. It's like that's what it is for me.
When it comes to that aspect of wellness, I know so many people who relate to the farmer instinct who say, I don't do things that are good for my health. But there's an attention to it nonetheless towards that. So, for example, it might be like you said, I never go anywhere, you know, where that's not on my mind. If I'm going to hang out with friends or I'm going to an event or I'm setting one up myself, where I'm going to make sure that there's food. And probably some good comfort food. Or if you're really into health, you're going to have healthy food there. But nonetheless, it's the attention's there.
Yes.
I think that's a key distinction between, you know, that and say people who don't have that on their mind as much. And oftentimes people who think of that as a means to an end. Like the food is a way of connecting. The food speaks to, if it's done really well, can speak to the soul in a way, you know, that means something. Well,
also, I've heard from them on this, where a lot of the farmers I've talked to have talked about, it's not about like achieving some like health standard or some physical thing. It's more about wanting to keep things okay, wanting everything to be good, everything to be all right. So it's more about that consistency and that rhythm than it is a certain level, any kind of an achievement. Because it's not a chasing.
No, exactly.
It's not like what so many other people do. When they describe wellness or health, they're thinking of it as like a goal that you're trying to reach. And it's not so much like this goal I'm trying to reach. I just don't want it to be outside of this range.
Exactly.
You know, and I think that range is kind of the thing that I'm tuned into. Like, did I have enough sleep? Am I not like overly tired or overly this or overly that? There's more of this like homeostasis kind of thing happening.
Definitely, because it's all about, well, the resource management kind of shifted into is like, those are like the basic needs. Like, if those are okay, then you can live, right? Like, because otherwise it's a distraction. It feels like with money. My husband is a farmer as well. We married well. So our conflict doesn't happen around money. It's dirty talk, man. It's like, let's go. Let's talk about money. You know, like, we get into it. It's good. And we enjoy it. And it's planning our future. It's like being creative with what resources we do have. And we love, like, it's just part of our normal connection and conversation, because we both just have this value for it. And when we're taking care of it, it's like, when we know that's taken care of, it's like, oh, okay, now we can dream. You know, it's the same with like, if I know our house is good and safe and there's no like issues with like a leaky roof or a cracked window or something, then it's like, oh, I'm safe. And now I can live. I can be in the house. So it is like, the attention is to take care of so that, in a way. It's not like I'm obsessed with these things and I only think about like my resources and all that. It's like,
even
no,
how you were talking about going to the doctor and all this stuff, it's just like, yeah, you just do this.
Just do it, yeah.
So that everything is okay.
Exactly.
So that you can have everything you need.
But we want to point out that that with each of these instincts, they can be pushed to an extreme and often
For
are.
sure, yes.
So you have people that overindulge, and you have hoarders, and you have you have a lot of that happening where it gets out of control. I get people that tell me they do this all the time that are farmer types. That they're just like, oh yeah, I overdid it again. I had too much to eat. I drank too much, and it's the need for resourcing that can get activated under stress, and then it's like I need more. And so, just as a point of reflection for all the farmers out there, like that can happen to all of our instincts as we So if you're anxious and if you're feeling a little extra stressed, you can over rev on that.
Just because you're bringing this up, like when there is stress and when I overextend my self-preservation, I think I lean more so into this isolation mode, this actual self-preservation versus like this hoarding or this fixation of like keeping things very rhythmic and systematic and rigid. It's this like turning inward and this like autonomy, like
so preserving your own resources. Is that what that is?
Maybe like which again, resources is such a big word. It can mean, like for me, that usually goes back to like connection or my heart and just my energy and it levels and stuff. And so sometimes it can be like if I do feel like my self-preservation type things are being pushed upon or depleting, then it was almost, I will do more of that hoarding aspect of but it's all that self resource that I'll like hold on to and isolate and withhold, like, and get these like, maybe, just distance myself in a way, I think. So it'll show up, It's a good question though.
Yeah. What else about resource management? What sticks out to you?
Resources, again, it's such a diverse word. And I think like another aspect of resource management that I think of is placing it in systems so that it can be either repeatable or it can grow, and consistency of it. Like if you can find a way to make your money work for you, right? Where it's like not just a one-time serve, like if there's a way to utilize these resources in better ways, that's very intriguing to my mind. Very intriguing. And so that's part of it too, is just like that repeatability and that growth element of resources.
And that goes to that sustainability thing that we keep coming back to, is that big word, which is like, can this sustain itself? Can this process continue? Process is another word for farmer types as well. It's like creating a process that continues on and is somewhat of a self-generating, kind of system.
And we're talking about these as if they're separate categories under the farmer, but the way you're talking about them just shows how they're all so interdependent.
Yeah, it's hard for me to...
Yeah, the wellness is not separated from the resource management, nor the one we haven't really talked about yet, the optimization.
Yeah.
And just take us into that one.
Okay, because I was like, that's where I want to go.
Go for
exactly, because
it
is super connected. And it's almost like they kind of, as I talk about one, I'm realizing like, well, it's hard to not like talk about this other aspect.
I could see
too.
You were like almost trying to hold back as you're like, but I need to go.
I need to wait for this. Okay.
No, go for it.
So the optimization, right? Like, so that, I mean, taking your resources and optimizing them, like that is a world of, it's a carnival. It's a carnival of play in my head. Like, let's figure this out. It's like, okay, so growing up in a restaurant, my father had a system for everything, right? Like down to a T, because in the restaurant world, it is about efficiency, right? People order their food and they want it quick, and you got to have those systems in place, right? And my father literally had a system for everything, how to pack an order. Like if we had 2 large orders and 1 small order and a combination, there's a specific bag for that. And you have to stack it a certain way. And if you don't, then it's like things could fall over or it's not effective. Like So my father literally had a system for every combination of boxes and dishes and how to pack them the most efficient way. Also, so you're not depleting resources. So you're not using 5 bags when it should only take 2. You're not like overusing materials and stuff like that, right? I even would nerd out and be like, I appreciated that aspect of my father for sure. So I'd always like listen to that and then learn it. And then it was like things like filling the duck sauce, right? Like, because my father would make our own in-house duck sauce, and we'd have to like portion it in these little cups, right? You guys all eat takeout Chinese food, right? You know what I'm talking about? Those little duck sauce cups. We're fancy. We do the homemade recipe. We don't do those packets, you know?
That's right.
But we have to like hand pour all of those little duck sauce cups. And so I would think of like, okay, what's the most efficient way to do this? You know, like, and, you know, do a stack of the cups and pour the duck sauce and then cap them all after you do like 50, and then you do it. And then even like how we stacked the duck sauce cups in the box, there was an order to it all. And again, in a restaurant world, like you needed that kind of efficiency and order, because when it gets busy and there's an hour and a half wait, it's like, you got to go. You have to just know it, right? And so optimization is, I feel like that's where a lot of the farmer instinct gets creative, loves to like kind of play and problem solve, and the desire to...
It feels like play?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it's...
because it's like creative.
It pulls at your creativity?
Yeah, and also the thrill of like figuring out a way that is not just effective and efficient, but like helps everyone. Like that's repeatable, not just by myself, but by others around me. And if you have that system in place, you're setting people up for success. Like, hey, my father's already done the homework on how to pack an order well. So you get to skip the 10 steps he had to figure out by problem solving, and you get to just jump ahead. You get to skip the 10 steps that he figured out, and you just get to jump ahead and start at 10. You know, my father also had this saying about every generation should get better and better. You know, this idea of just prosperity, and your sacrifices invest into the next generation, and how like your ceiling becomes the next generation's floor, right? That idea of, again, longevity and legacy. Those are the things that feel very worthwhile to, I think, a lot of farmers. And so things like this problem solving and how do I optimize like this resource and do it in a way that can help others, help myself, so that we can do whatever the goal is. Get people their food faster, get people what they need in a more effective way, you know? So, yeah.
There's so much to that, because it's incremental. It's like both the incremental growth, but then there's also the ability to appreciate from that 30,000-foot perspective how much, you know, you have built upon the structures that others have laid down. And then you go above that, and then the next generation does that. And if you could look at all of those, you would see, you know, something that's pretty astounding that we've been able to accomplish as a human race over, you know, millennia. And it requires that instinct to be able to do that. I think that that's a beautiful aspect of of that farmer instinct. And to think about like how much reward or joy the farmer gets on optimizing, because it actually produces something greater, right? It's the progress. It's moving us forward.
Yes, progress.
So when you like that word.
I do. I'm like, yes, that's good.
Yeah, because it's not just about the repeatable process for the sake of the repeatable process. I've never met a farmer that says, "Oh, I just love just staring at processes all day and just like making sure that nobody interrupts that process or ruins it, and just maintaining it for the sake of maintenance." I've never met a farmer like that.
No.
I don't think there's any human at our best that's oriented towards sameness and towards a stability that does not produce something. I think all of us are designed for, if we have a stability, it is for the sake of optimization. You think about raising your kids. If you're doing it, you know, decently well, your kids are growing.
Yeah.
Right? Your kids are getting healthier. Your kids are learning. And that's the structure that, you know, the farmer structures can provide for all of us.
Yeah, like everything you're saying is such, like, it just resonates in my heart. Like, it reminds me of that aspect of like longevity and legacy and being a part of something that's bigger than me, right? Because I think at the end of the day, with the farmer instinct, it's about touching and putting your hands to and participating into something that's bigger than you. And if you don't have this resource, you could starve. If you don't have rest, then you could just exhaust yourself and be out and not be able to participate. You know, like, it's like there's this grander, like, universal, like, energy that you're just getting to participate in and put your hands to. And that's why the farmer's such a beautiful picture for me that I resonate way more with than this idea of just self-preservation, because it almost has this idea of like me, or just want to protect me, you know, which there's an aspect of that, right? This instinctual thing, there's a part of that that's accurate, but I love it's almost like it just opens up the canister when you say it's a farmer, because it that picture of, again, like putting my hands to the dirt, but the dirt isn't mine. And how do I become a good caretaker of this resource that's
really profound,
that I'm blessed to care for?
Yeah.
I don't cause the sun or the rain to create a seed to grow, but I can plant the seed. And if I didn't plant the seed, this crop wouldn't have grown.
Yeah.
And so it's like this invitation for participation. That is what is so like, why would I not want to lean into that, you know?
So thanks for listening. You can take the new Hunters, Farmers, and Teamers assessment on our website, theartofgrowth.org. That is our new instincts test. And you can order the Hunters, Farmers, and Teamers book on Amazon now. The link is in the show notes. Based on our interactions, we are also adding content to our Instagram about the topic, which is just Art of Growth. And the best way to support the show is to leave us a review wherever you listen and share this episode with someone else. We're hugely grateful for you doing this work with us. Grace and growth, my friends.